This this video today is to give my own opinions about what we are seeing happening within our country about the basic right of freedom of speech, but also the freedom of religion. Now, recently the governor of Georgia said, I'm under pressure from all these big businesses that have operations and other things in this state, and so he's vetoed a religious bill that would guarantee that not one particular ethnic or gender biased group like the homosexual movement would be able to subjugate other people to living the way they want them to. And that's what the religious bill was supposed to do. It's protecting everybody's rights. That includes those who aren't gay, those who don't agree with the idea that it's unnatural for two people of the same sex to live together, or to even what it's really about is this: telling people in this country, this is how we live and you're going to accept it. And it's not so much you accepting it, it's we're going to force you to accept it. That's when freedom becomes the question mark. Is it free to tell somebody else you have to live the way we tell you to, because somehow they have the authority to say that and dictate that fact to someone else? That a preacher is an ordained individual who has to answer to God for what they do. If you're a homosexual, you already know that you don't believe in the Bible, because it's an abomination according to God's law. And it's in the Bible. All you have to do, folks, is look it up, and you can see it right in front of your face. You can go on the internet and look it up. How does God see people who live together who are of the same sex? He says it's considered to him an abomination. In church now, I'm hearing people who are coming to the church, who are visiting and have the opportunity to speak at the pulpit, and they're saying that no matter what's going on, no matter how bad it gets, we're supposed to just simply love each other. But see, that kind of says to me as a Christian that what you're saying is, if God tells me it's wrong, I'm supposed to just forget that. I'm supposed to just throw that out of my mind and just say, kind of like how the hippies lived in the 60s, we're supposed to just tell each other, oh, it's all great, it's all good. In other words, you're high on something, so you don't care what happens, because you're only seeing that one side of the issue. And God looks at the whole issue. He doesn't look at just one thing. He says, love you one another. But how far do you go on that and say, here's that line in the sand, and you have to say, he says it's an abomination. But do you say you go over that line because you're supposed to forget what he says in the Bible and accept it? No, you don't. You have a limit where he says you are supposed to, and you are responsible for standing up for what is right. And that is why people are so blinded by these ongoing clashes between what people know is right and what the government is doing, which is wrong, because the government was never supposed to exist to subjugate and mandate law over people when it's against their religious beliefs, because that's what founded America. America was founded because they were under persecution in England because of how they believed and what they believed. So they left England, they came here to the United States in order to escape persecution, escape harassment, and they tried to start a new nation based on the attitude that what one believes in is not something somebody else to subjugate you to live by. And the gays are doing that right now against the American people. It may not be a religious belief, but it's no different, because you're making somebody else believe something because you believe it. And nobody else has that right. Nobody's ever had that right. The government of the United States was founded on the idea that everybody is entitled to their own opinion, not because the gays feel they've been subjugated or they've been deprived, that now everything's turned around and they have the right to go against everybody else. And it's not so much just to say to somebody else, this is how I accept things and this is what I believe, and now you have to accept it. That is not the way that our government was founded on, or it should never be acceptable to the American people to say that one group should have the absolute final word about how and what you believe in. And nobody has that right to take your choice and your liberty to decide how you want to live and who you are. They don't have that right. They never have had that right to take it away from you. And people have to stand up. People have to speak out, just like I'm doing on this video. You have to tell the American people any way you can that if you want to live stupid and you want to live blind and you want to just bury your head in the sand like an ostrich, then you let the fags, the gays, the homosexuals, you let them all do these things to the American people, and you just become oblivious to standing up for what you believe in. And that is what the government is doing against the American people. They are standing in our way. They're standing in our face and saying, you don't have the right, you don't have the freedom anymore to stand up for yourself or to even to accept the way you live, and that the government doesn't have the right to override your opinion or your lifestyle or how you live. If they can stand by the gays and they can tell the gay community, you can live this way, and then turn around on that same note and say, okay, we're not only going to believe and allow you to live that way, we're going to force everybody else to believe that and live that way. That is when the government has overstepped its bounds as an authority of this country, because that's what they're doing. They are subjugating people to living the way that the government is telling people to live, and that is socialism. Socialism is communism. Obama this week went to Havana, Cuba. He did the twist, he did the hug bug, he did all these different dances and everything with Raul Castro, and then he turned around and he hugged Fidel Castro. What does that mean? Well, it means this: Obama is a communist, but he's also a socialist, and you're gonna do everything you have to prove to the other guy in the equation who's supposed to be the bad guy that I'm a bad guy too, so we're all in it together, you know? There's no reason for us to fight anymore. That's what he said when he went on television to say, we're going to start diplomatic relations with Cuba. We're going to take down the walls that have been in existence. And there's nothing that's changed about Cuba. What has changed is America itself. It is now a communist nation just like Cuba is. So that is why Obama has been shoving this down our throats. That's why Obama's been telling the American people over and over again, this is not a war against Islam. This is no longer the United States of America as a free nation, because now we're going to tell you how to live. We're going to tell you what you believe in. We're going to tell you what you will accept in your life. And the government just now has done that with cutting down and destroying the state's actual rights under the 10th Amendment to say the federal laws that exist are only supposed to be for our benefit, but when they don't, the states have the right to say this is where it ends, because we have the final say for what we do within our own states, within our own unions. Because all of the union that represents the United States is individual states. They are not a union like a global continent, or like it's a European Union, like they're all different countries but they're all linked together. Well, that's what Obama's doing to the United States. Now he's saying, I'm the dictator, I'm the head honcho of this whole government system of socialist states, and now I'm telling you how you're going to live and what you're going to do. And when the states stand up and they say, this is wrong, Mr. Obama, you can't do that, because under our Constitution we have the final say of what happens. And what is the government doing? They're stepping in and saying, no, you can't do that anymore. And it's like, how come we can't do it anymore? What happened to our Constitution? Where's the U.S. Constitution? Is it still in the Smithsonian? Did you burn it? I mean, how is it the Constitution doesn't have any power to say this is what our nation was founded on in 1776? And now the government's saying, well, all that's over with. It doesn't exist anymore. But they won't say that. But they're doing everything else to prove to you that is what they're saying. That is what is happening in this nation. the country has no rights to say, I don't agree with that, because now they're telling you, and they're even telling the preachers, you got to accept the fact that the gays and the homosexuals are out there, you have to marry them. Guess what? If a gay wants to live the way they do, why do they even need a marriage? You know, why do they have to have acceptance from somebody who answers to a higher authority than the government? Why do the gays have to have that? Ask yourself, why do the gays have to have a marriage license if they feel what they're doing is right? That they have to have approval from someone else to say, I've got somebody else's approval of this too. In other words, they're trying to justify their actions. And now the government's saying, okay, we'll help you do that. And that's why they're subjugating everybody. And this is a nightmare to wake up in this country and to see how every day the government constantly is doing more and more and more things to dictate us and to keep us subjugated to something that, to anybody, it should be their individual right to say, I don't agree with this and I'm not going to accept it. And the preachers are the same way. But you know what? They answer to somebody else than the government. The government doesn't give them their actual doctorate. The government does not give them the authorization to say, well, I'm an ordained minister. Somebody else gives that to them. God gives them that right. He's the one that says you have the authority to join two people together. But that does not mean that if it's against his law, that he still has to honor those two people who are the same sex and say, well, I guess God's okay with that. He didn't say that in his word. The Bible very clearly says certain things are wrong, certain things are right. And when a preacher goes to seminary and he becomes that ordained minister, he is responsible to that Bible. He's responsible to God to uphold what he has said in his word. And if a gay says, well, that's too bad, I want to get married, why should you have to get married? If you want to live that way, it shouldn't be up to mankind to say, okay, that's okay with us, or that a preacher should have to say, I hereby authorize that you two are now married together. You see what I'm saying? In other words, the gays are saying, we cannot just say that we're this way or that way. They must have the acceptance of the religious community in saying, if y'all say it's okay, we don't have a guilt complex, because now we're going to be able to legally get married together. But if the preacher and the pastor says that's wrong and we don't accept that because God doesn't accept that, they can't live with it. They can't just go on and say, okay, it's okay, we don't need a marriage license. They have to have that acceptance. And God is telling people, you stand up for what's right and you oppose it, or you go along with it. And he's saying, you are responsible for what you've done. Everybody's responsible. And that includes Planned Parenthood murdering unborn babies. That includes the Justice of the Peace, who still has the authority from God to join those two people together. Because I think they have to swear on a Bible that they will uphold what God's Word says. And that's why some people have been arrested, because they said, I got to answer to somebody higher than you, Obama, or whoever becomes president. Somebody else, you don't have to answer to that person. And that's what the gay community is trying to subjugate and force people to accept. That they are God. That they choose and decide what happens. And that's the end of the equation. There you have your solution and your answer. You stand for what God says, or you stand for what man says, and you're going against what the Bible says, and that's what marriage is about, what that Bible tells you. And that's where America is heading, down a cesspool. They're heading down the toilet because they don't honor what that Bible represents. So to Nathan Deal, I say this. You took a vow to uphold the Constitution of Georgia. You failed because you're not standing by religious freedom, because now you're letting the government control what we do. Thank you.